Welcome to Ownby at the Movies! Hi, I'm your host, Chad Ownby, and today is the first episode of Ownby at the Movies, in which we will be talking about the animated film Asantewaa and the Golden Stool. We're going to talk about how you can watch that film if you have not seen it, and we're going to go over the production credits of it now. If you have not seen the movie, just know this. All of the podcasts that we will be doing on Ownby at the movies are completely spoiled so that we can really do a deep dive into them. So if you want to watch the movie, I'm going to go ahead and link in the description where you can watch it. So you could go ahead and pause this video right now and go watch it, and then come on back and listen to the podcast if you want to have seen the film before we do a deep dive into it. So before we start, know that I am in no means an expert on Ghanaian culture or Ashanti, the history of the Ashanti culture. But I will do my best to use my the limited film expertise I have to kind of break down this movie, Asantewaa. So let's go ahead and get started with our deep dive into this movie. So Asantewaa is a animated movie based on true events. It was directed by Jesse Sanqua Mills. It was also produced by Jesse Sanqua Mills. Anyway, so the film, again, is historical fiction in the sense of that it tells the story of an actual conflict that took place in Ghana. And I want to say the year was 1900, the Battle for the Golden Stool. So let's go ahead and go through the movie itself and kind of break it down beat by beat. So in the beginning, we are in modern times, and a grandfather is speaking to his grandchildren, a little girl and a little boy, and is discussing, the idea of storytelling. And what this immediately does is it sets up that in this culture, in this story, that the art of storytelling, that storytelling as a way to gain a lens into this culture and the vast, rich history of it is established right away, that this is important. So we have that right away, that storytelling is a big integral part of this culture. Anansi is mentioned immediately. The little boy says, I don't want to listen to any more Anansi, or all of my friends are getting bored with the Anansi stories because we've heard them so many times. If you're not familiar, Anansi is a spider, essentially, who basically weaves a bunch of stories, and those stories or fables are told in Ghanaian culture. I only know that through Ms. Amagadi in discussion of Anansi stories. So there's a immediate link there to that culture. So anyway, so the story they tell is of Asantewaa, which incidentally is the name of the granddaughter, and she's named after this former queen of the Ashanti tribe, which was the group of individuals of the indigenous inhabitants living in Ghana when they were taken over and colonized by the British. So from here we get the visual as the grandfather's telling the story, and a merchant in this Ashanti culture tells a member of the British Empire about the Golden Stool, which, according to Ashanti culture, provided essentially divine right to rule. So a very deep, rich part of the ancestry and history and culture of Ashanti. And of course, because imperialism, the British have decided that they're going to take it because it's not fair to that governor. He goes back and tells the governor It's not fair that governor only has a wooden stool, and the Ashanti tribe has this golden stool. He wants it because he wants the money and he wants the power, and whine, 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 whine. The governor is very whiny. It's very clear cut who's the good guy in this story and who's the bad guy in this story. I think we can all pretty much agree imperialism, colonialism, bad. We're not fans of that, right? Not a good thing. Going into another culture and another country and trying to take it over, regardless of where you are, whether it be Africa, Latin America, India, the United States, Canada, Mexico. It does not matter where you are. Uh, it's not good. And going into that is we see desired cultural appropriation. Um, this again, this golden stool is so important to the rich culture of the Ashanti, yet to the British Empire, it's a cash grab. And they're literally trying. The metaphor isn't lost on me, and I hope that it isn't lost on anyone who views this. That the British Empire is literally again using the golden stool to appropriate this culture, and take something that doesn't belong to them, which is a metaphor for what they did and what other countries did in Africa when they carved it up and um, you know imperialized and colonized in the 19th and 20th century. And probably before that. Again, I'm not a expert on African history. So Asantewaa, the queen of the Ashanti, upon hearing that the British Empire and the governor want to commandeer the Golden Stool, are is very upset about this, understandably so. So she calls for mobilization. The men at first are a little apprehensive, so the women step up, and that inspire her leadership and her willpower, inspire the men to step up as well eventually. And we get in the film a training montage of these warriors fighting. And during the montage, we also get a shot of Asantewaa essentially being endowed with powers from in a spiritual level from the land itself, which she'll use later on in the battle. So what I really like about this montage, and I think what's interesting, is you see you see basically you see a difference in what you see a difference in the amount of passion between the two sides fighting in this conflict. You see so much passion coming from Asantewaa and the Ashanti, whereas the governor is just talking to the rest of the British troops and is just like, all right, guys, we're going to go take it because I want it. And I think that that is telling of any sort of conflict. If you've got a group that is fighting to keep something that is theirs, a group that is fighting to protect part of their cultural heritage or background, I feel like that's going to evoke more of a passionate response than the group who is just trying to take something that does not, frankly, belong to them. So it was very interesting to see the dynamic, the contrast. That's the word I was looking for. The contrast of the two fighting population, so to speak. So after we get this montage with some voiceovers, we have our battle scenes, and the battle is very interesting because there's a couple different things that are really interesting in the fight. For one, it's at times there's a big fight scene between Asantewaa and this governor that they've been building to it for most of the movie. It had been, structurally the film had been building to this conflict between the two, and I think that they did a good job building to that. The fight scene itself was a little uncomfortable to watch at times because of the fact that uncomfortable in a good way. When the governor is winning the hand-to-hand combat, it's a little uncomfortable, but then she does end up winning at the end, thankfully. But one thing that I liked, a little subtle touch of the filmmaker that I thought was really cool, is at one point Asantewaa has a gun, has a rifle in her hand. The rifle represents the tool of the oppressor. You know, the easy way out. I saw on a podcast once, I was listening to another podcast, Guns, where they were saying that in a lot of ways, sorry if you're a fan of guns, guns in fiction or historical fiction represent unearned power. And when it came to imperialism and using guns to conquer other cultures and countries, that is the definition of unearned power. So I love that she takes that gun and drops it before she has the hand-to-hand combat with the governor. She says, "No, I'm gonna do this my way. I'm gonna earn. This is gonna be. I have. I don't need to earn power because I have this power. And this is my land, and I'm gonna protect it in a way. I refuse to use the tool of my oppressor." And I loved that. You know, I thought that that was a brilliant little touch. So in the end, we get a voice. So Asantewaa wins the battle, but we get a voiceover from the grandfather that unfortunately they did not win the war, so to speak. Asantewaa would, like many royalty before her, would be exiled from Ghana and would live out the rest of her days in exile. You know, and it would be a long time before the British Empire would be expelled, so to speak, from Ghana, and they would gain their independence. But the Golden Stool does not ever fall into the hands of the British Empire. So even, and I love that, because even though they took the land, even though they took the lives of many people and uprooted this culture and really destroyed a lot of lives, there's a part of that cultural identity, a major part of the cultural identity of the Ashanti, that remained untouched by the oppressor. And I think that that in itself is a very powerful lesson. The other thing I want to discuss is this interesting distinction that, like, interesting emphasis that the filmmakers put on the fact that Asantewaa was a warrior queen. Woman at one point is even put in all caps. So somebody from Ghana, please answer this question to me, because again, I am not from Ghana, so I don't know the answer to this question. Is Asantewaa, is she the exception to the rule of these folk heroes, these literal people, real people? But is Asantewaa the exception to the rule of being a ruling warrior queen versus warrior kings at, you know, throughout the history of Ghana? I don't know. But either way, I think she was incredibly empowering, and I love that the little girl at the beginning is named after her. And I love the feminist message there of, you can be a queen too. You can have that inner power. You can have that inner courage, that inner strength to overcome. And I think that that message will be timeless. So I think it's a very important movie from what I was seeing. I think it's a very relevant movie. I encourage it. I think you should watch it for sure. Again, I'm putting the link to how to watch Asantewaa in the description below. So again, I highly encourage you to watch this movie. It's only for about 46 minutes long, and it's animated. I think it would be an interesting movie to watch with your kids if they're old enough to watch, in your mind, watch violence. There's like one joke or reference to body parts in passing. So I would say, if you're gonna watch it with your kids, just know those two things. But other than that, again, I thought very highly of it. I thought it was very well done. You could feel the passion coming out of the project. So this was the first episode of Ownby at the Movies in the can. That's right, we are done. If you have any other movies that you would like me to view and discuss with you, please put in the chat below. Please comment below, or reach out to us in another way on our website. Coming up next week, we are going to take a break from Ownby at the Movies to discuss Valentine's Day around the world. That's right. It's not just a Hallmark holiday, folks. We're going to learn about Valentine's Day traditions around the world. So thank you very much. And I hope you enjoyed this edition of Ownby at the Movies. Bye-bye now.